Hi, good morning, and welcome to LOVEU at CVPR 2021. I'm Matt Feiszli, research scientist and manager here at Facebook AI Research. I'd like to welcome all of you. In particular, I'd like to welcome our invited speakers, our organizers, and all the entrants into the challenge this morning. I'd like to start off with a thought about where we are with video understanding and what led to this workshop. When I first started working in video, I think there was sort of this hope or maybe pipe dream that there was enough information in video that we could learn essentially everything about everything just by watching. And I mean, everything from physics to language to causality. And we knew this would be a long road. It wasn't never supposed to be easy. But the reality is that video understanding has been remarkably stuck. And I think we're stuck at a fundamental question. What are the right tasks? I think really there are a zoo of possible goals, everything from narrative extraction to causal reasoning, predictive tasks, extracting graphs of tasks from watching people perform actions, navigation, planning. It wasn't obvious which of these we would start with. Many are quite hard. But what seems to be the case is that a number of the tasks people started with ended up being solved largely by, if not single frame techniques, largely by very, very temporally local tasks. I think when you think about it, one common problem here is that the average video frame doesn't carry a lot of information about the structure. Video is highly redundant. Adjacent frames carry similar information. But even a 2-year-old knows how to divide time up into meaningful units, and then they reason with those. And so a question is, can we find, in some sense, these meaningful units? This initially may feel like an intermediate task, like the sort of thing that's fallen out of favor in the deep learning end-to-end world. But I think what gives us a little confidence is that something like this actually does have immediate applications, and they're quite practical. In creative AI, you want to do video summarization. You want to extract narrative. You want to extract highlights or keyframes. In embodied AI, you want to build some sort of memory that maps the world as you're dealing with it. You may want to issue queries against it, like show what I did today, or ask questions. Did I lock the door? Is this, though, hopelessly ill-posed or ambiguous? Is there one canonical way to summarize a video? The first observation I think that a lot of people had is that frames, video frames, are a lousy choice for a fundamental unit. They're not a good word, so to speak. If you try to do masked language modeling at a fixed FPS, your model probably learns nothing. It learns that the middle frame looks like the average of the surrounding frames. A lot of the successful techniques, and there were some early work in SSL, video SSL particularly, dealt with the fact that video is highly redundant explicitly. A lot of these techniques would look for informative frames, say where there's high change, and they might use things like a large optical flow magnitude as a proxy for that. And then the technique starts learning something. So is there a principled approach to finding the information in video? Well, from cognitive science, we know that humans actually reliably and predictably perceive boundaries in video. They do this chunking without any predefined taxonomy. They perceive, for example, boundaries at places where the actor changes, where the object of interaction changes, where the actor starts performing a new action, or where the scene changes. And this is an extensive literature that dates back decades. And I do have to say thank you to Jitendra Malik for pointing us to this literature. It's been extremely helpful at every step of the way. Now, this event perception has structure. For example, doing household chores breaks down into tasks like changing a light bulb. Changing a light bulb breaks down into tasks like climbing the ladder and unscrewing the old bulb. Climbing the ladder might be a sequence of steps: right foot, left foot, right foot. Now, it was really exciting that there seemed to be this structure and that it seemed to be so universal. We tried to repeat these experiments in team meetings, and it was very striking. There was quite good agreement on what was a boundary and what could not possibly be a boundary. To create the data set, however, we need to get annotators to do what humans do naturally. And this, ironically, was quite hard. Annotators are being paid to do a task correctly. They want instructions. They want to know what the task is. And one of our biggest challenges in creating a data set here was to structure the task for the annotators without destroying the natural signal we're trying to capture. It turned out the bulk of the work was really around corralling a couple of fundamental ambiguities in the problem. They were quite analogous to ambiguities that come up in image segmentation as well. So one ambiguity on the image side is the level of spatial detail. And by this I mean, do you annotate fence or do you annotate fence posts and slats? Do you annotate a person or do you annotate head, shirt, hands, and so on? However, in this case, there are really a very discrete set of choices. The boundaries are sparse, and there's good agreement on places where the boundaries should never be placed. You would never cut a fence post in half. You would never cut a shirt in half, for example. Similarly, on the temporal video side, there's temporal level of detail. Do you annotate that a person is dancing, or do you annotate every individual dance move? Do you annotate that they're playing guitar, or do you annotate every single chord change and strum? Now, there's a question of expertise here. There's a question of being able to perceive these things. But for the most part, we found it to be quite universal, and it was a choice to direct the annotators. The other was around spatial attention, or spatiotemporal attention. If you have multiple actors, whose timeline are you marking boundaries in? But again, the boundaries are sparse, and there's good agreement on where the boundaries should never be placed. So if I had to summarize what we've learned about video segmentation, it would be in this slide. You can think of a video as containing subject, verb, object, and scenes. A change in any one of these will give you a boundary. And further, if none of these change, then this gives you an equivalence class of frames defined by the same semantics in subject, verb, object, and scene that you can learn from. Mutual information between a pair of frames drops across boundaries, which is similar to image segmentation across edges. And the two fundamental ambiguities are those we called out: attention and level of detail. Those are some thoughts, some high-level thoughts, as well as a path we took to get to a particular task. Now, we remain a long way from narrative extraction, from causal reasoning and planning in long-form video. But maybe not that far. And I sincerely hope that we as a community can continue to make progress and understand the structure of longer timescales. Now, before we get to the program, I'd like to thank all our organizers. It is a lot of work to put one of these together, and your contribution is very, very much appreciated. I'd also, of course, like to thank our speakers, without whom there would be no conference, and to whom I am eagerly looking forward to listening. So that said, let's get to the meat of the program. Thank you very much. I'll turn it back to Mike to take us forward. Thank you.